called my phone, said she missed me, but I saw her like last night.
I hope everyone's doing well and welcome back to another weekly outlook. So a bit of a slightly later upload today, so apologies for that, guys. But let's get straight into it. Cool. We'll start off on our first factory. A bit of a jam-packed week last week. First week of the month, NFP, bunch of news events. Friday was a bank holiday. And this week is not as jam-packed. There's not much going on the Monday at all, right? Not much on the Tuesday for the dollar. Some news. We have FOMC meeting minutes on the Wednesday for the dollar. Unemployment claims to watch for. And I'd also pay attention to both of these on the Friday as well. So nothing too crazy. But let's see how the week is shaping up. So now before we get into that, we know we're 1 week into the month. Where are our monthly candles, right? So for the DXY, with the monthly candle, is sort of, I would say undecided to an extent. Right? It's not very clear. It's hard to say. We've swept previous monthly low, which is fine, right? We expect a bearish month, so we're more worried about where are we placing the high, right? Not the sort of interim low. Now, as a bare minimum, in terms of a retracement, I would watch previous weekly high into this fair value gap. Right? Watch for a sweep on this. But I think here, consider this weekly order block as well. If we're able to get up here, this may be somewhere where price turns from, right? I do think we've had a very extended run. We've built a very nice daily range here, you guys can see. And there's definitely room for a retracement. If we can retrace into this previous swing around here, around the equilibrium, it wouldn't, one, it will be good. We can potentially consider something from there. But two, it really wouldn't surprise me if price sort of works its way up here for a reversal. The first target, previous weekly high. Second target, we're looking for that previous swing. Once we're in this zone, anywhere here, then we're looking for that turnaround on price, market maker sell model, and continuation to the lows. Right, very simple on DXY. Just quickly take a look at the bar as well. As you can see, we have this sort of, small accumulation here leading into this volume imbalance, and this is the previous weekly high. So it's very, very likely if we're going to have a bit of a shallower protraction that we will probably sweep this high as well before we get that reversal. And then, we've got a bit of sell side liquidity already engineered here for price to then come and take later on. Yeah. Same thing if we just start out with that monthly candle. We know you sort of came from the premium of this large consolidation, started making a move down. This month so far has only moved up, right? And weekly candle, as of course, swept the previous candle, started to move higher. We come to the daily, we see it's a very similar scenario to DXY, where we had a sort of extended daily range, nice run. But from here, this looks more poised to sort of trade lower from this zone, I would say, rather than the DXY. Something I'll just be watching. Of course, the bond yields could just sort of consolidate, especially this week. We don't have as many news drivers, so there's a good chance it could be a lot slower, a bit more choppier. When we come over to Euro GBP, what we can see is, if you guys remember last time, this was our sort of initial target, especially on the 4 hour. It was a very, very clear cut target. It was a sort of very obvious buy side, high. We wanted to see price take out. We come on the daily, what we see, we had a case of sort of accumulation here, manipulation, the distribution this way, and now we've built a nice new range. You guys can see I've already marked out. So what I'd anticipate from here, I would say the next obvious target is, of course, going to be this high. I want to see price retrace into this, and from there provide continuation. You guys can see on the weekly, this week I'd expect a bullish bias after setting the low somewhere around here. Right, it may not necessarily reach into the discount, but I think a sweep on previous daily low or somewhere around here towards the equilibrium will be warranted. Price could turn around. I definitely watch the news on the Friday. GDP for the pound should be a mover for this. If we are, looking to be bullish on the dollar this week, and we're looking to be, of course, bullish on Euro GBP as well, that means the better short is likely going to be GBP USD. We'll take a quick look at the chart. But the one thing with sort of, discussing the charts on the weekly outlook is they can flip very quick, right? It's sort of hard to say, this will happen, that will happen. And then you get to the Wednesday, the Thursday, whatever day it is, and it's the complete opposite. Euro GBP is doing another thing, DXY is doing another thing, and now you have to redecide, it's this pair, that pair. So that's why typically, sometimes I get questions, we don't cover Euro USD, GBP USD. and I do reply it's the opposite of the DXY, but it's at your discretion to pick which pair is better and, you know, which one do you want to short, long, whichever way it is. And honestly, even using arrays between EURUSD, USD doesn't always line up, right? So if we take this daily range, for instance, and we take this daily range, do they look remotely similar? I would say they don't, right? So now, if we are putting a scenario ideally where, you know, of course, this will retrace and then we can start longing this again and we can start shorting the DXY again, one obvious target that I've been watching is the sort of this cluster of buy side liquidity on EURUSD. If the price can reach for this on EURUSD, again, very similar to the DXY, obvious target is previous weekly low to be watching for. A sweep on this, then a move back up to these highs, and potentially even, you know, price, if it really, really wants to kick, could start reaching for bigger targets over here at 1.22 and so forth. But again, this is a weekly chart, very zoomed out. This could take a very long time. You know, I know we've had sort of very one-sided price action over the, you know, I'd say, what's that, about the last maybe 8-ish candles. Some very big moves in these candles you guys can see, right? If we look across the rest of the chart, it's not always like that, right? You see bigger retracements, a bit of consolidation in between, whatnot. So I think because this target's a reach, it can definitely go probably very soon. But once this is taken, then I'd be careful in thinking, you know, we're instantly headed here, we're instantly headed there, unless there's some sort of major news driver to take price there. Look at USDCAD. I really like the weekly close on this. You guys can see I had something marked out. Something we didn't actually use by any means. What I would say is, right, we can go like this. This is the first sort of, you know, genuine trade I look at. If we look at the previous weekly candle, I do not expect this to get violated, right? I don't expect this candle to get swept. So if you wanted to be extra safe, you could go with your high at the previous weekly candle. If you come in the daily, you see, you know, we use that high. Alternatively, right, I would assume that this high does not go and we could use this high. You know, if you wanted to make it a bit tighter, you could come down to this high as well. Right? Realistically, you know, the way we can view it sometimes is if this high goes, the likelihood is all three of these go, possibly even this high. If you take this one, there's a bit more breathing space, but if you wanted to take this one, you might as well take this candle. If that goes, all three of them, right? Just logically, right, guys? Now, if price from here is able to move back into that OTE, look at the 0.62, or we look for a sweep on that high, do the 0.705. This is not a bad shot at all. It's very likely from here price heads down. We know it's in a market maker sell model. We have a clear weekly target here, quite similar to EURUSD, right? And we want to see price push low. Weekly is pointing towards it, the daily chart pointing towards it. So if a premium opportunity is given to you to short, then it's not a bad shot. Now, if this opportunity is not brought to us and price, you know, sort of just sells off from here, I would have considered a sell stop, right? But one thing that I don't like in this specific scenario is that if we have a sell stop, our stop loss would be, you know, sort of relatively equal highs. That's not, you know, somewhere I'd be super confident taking a swing from and letting it run. Instead, I'd rather see price this high, carry on, build a nice range, and then be a bit more confident saying, you know what, I really don't expect price to reach back up here, take a different short if that is offered, right? But by any means, I don't think USDCAD is bad here. I think it's clearly in a sell program, and if it gives us that opportunity that we just spoke about, it would be very nice. USDJPY is definitely not as good. You guys can see tight weekly consolidation. We did initially have a good target here, but, you know, just from the looks of this, from the looks of that daily, definitely not something I want to entertain for the time being. That's not something I'll, you know, be confident shorting. I think if this is going to be a large consolidation, which it does look like, you know, 1, 2, 3, over here you got several types. It could just stay in this range. It could go then run the highs at some point and then come lower, and it could take a long time. So it's not a chart I'm interested in swinging or taking anything on at the moment. Gold. Same thing. You guys remember from last time, just we'll quickly touch on it anyways. It's not amazing, but we did sweep this internal low. Well, on some charts it's been swept. Here it's very right. If we go over to, who was it swept? There's a different broker. I believe Awanda has, so Awanda has a proper sweep. So it makes it, it makes it a bit more tough. The reason I would count this as a sweep, right? This is one for the books for you guys. If you look at both charts, one swept, one didn't, right? So, why would we potentially consider it as a sweep instead of saying flat out, or the other chart has equal lows, whatever? Because from this potential sweep, you've had very, very clear displacement. You've had a kick up in price. The likelihood is we can count this as a sweep. This is, a liquidity purge and a reversal, quite textbook. You've had a strong, strong move away. So from here, our longs back on the table. Now, me personally, I don't think it's the best opportunity, right? Although that sort of, sweep and move higher is textbook, I wouldn't consider the best opportunity on gold, because the likelihood is here, it's looking very sideways. Sometimes when you see this on the chart, it's just not worth tampering with. Rather, I'd let it make a second leg, give us a kick up, and see if we're then offered an opportunity to push for all-time high. You guys can see price has sort of, swerved it. It had this, swerved all-time high, all the way back down, give a nice OTE down here, back up, retracement, went back up here, swept the high, swerved it. So if price really wants to consolidate here, it could just push back up and then back down, and I wouldn't want to be a part of that, right? So even though it doesn't look horrible from how it is right now, I'd rather see it develop a bit more and see what it can give us than sort of take this initial OTE if it's given. S&P, very extended now. It's been doing exactly what we want, which is good. As you expected, if you guys remember, big candle like this, next candle moving away, this candle then heading for the all-time high, the next buy side target at the time, right? So from a candle that we currently have, I would only expect expansion, right? The likelihood is here, price wouldn't be ready for any sort of major retracement. That doesn't mean any retracement at all, but I would say nothing too crazy. So this market hasn't opened yet. So when it opens, there's a good chance we can sweep into this weekly fair value gap, right? Tag this fair value gap, and then again, just head for those local highs. Aim for, higher prices again in the S&P. Very similar to Bitcoin. If, you are in a sort of long and you're leaving a runner, you just aim for whole numbers. It depends on what sort of time frame you're in a trade on. But, for example, if I was in a, let's just say theoretically, if you were to get OTE here, or you were to take that weekly fair value, or whatever it is, then, you could potentially be holding this towards 6,300, 6,350, or 64, so forth. Just keep it basic. It's nothing, crazy. The methodology behind it is just whole numbers, right? It's just an easy target to aim for. So, yeah, that's something you guys can use. Lastly, Bitcoin on its way to all-time high. Weekly candle is about to close. Not a bad close by any means. We've had that manipulation, sweeping relatively equal lows into this weekly fair value gap. Big kick up last week. This weekly candle not bad at all. And from here, I would expect price to push for the all-time high. Right, simple as that. New all-time high, I think, is loading potentially this week, but whenever it happens, I think that's the next sort of major move for Bitcoin. I don't see us dumping before we get that. And the likelihood is if we do break that, then we're going to continue building the range, and this might finally really be that push for 120k on Bitcoin all-time high. But yeah, guys, that is it for the weekly outlook. As usual, any questions at all, anything I can help with, please just drop me a message.